In the digital age, everybody got a phone, and so now everybody has a voice and the ability to broadcast ideas across multiple timelines. And many people are attempting to fit complex ideas into 30-second videos, and some of us are confused about who to trust and why. And so yesterday, a video came up on my For You page where this person was asking philosophy professors what pseudo-intellectual is, and one of the professors actually took it as an opportunity to attack conservatism as a philosophy. And in doing so, he actually demonstrated a clairvoyantly ignorant position against thinkers on the right. And so I think it deserves some unpacking. Let's play the clip.
The course of my past sort of 15, 20 years is the rise of the sort of intellectualism on the right. And so the idea of social conservatism comes couched in all the language of the academy, but really is a kind of code for there are certain types of people that I don't want to admit exist. And so I'll call myself a social conservative, and then I don't have to consider it. Research is not about political ideology unless you're researching political ideology. So a conservative philosopher, for example, it kind of sounds like they're not interested in any other truth than the one they are already interested in. And that is what I would call a pseudo-intellectual, bordering on solipsism, that gets right down to it, because they've decided that there are certain things that count and are legitimate and others that don't, and they're not going to talk about those.
Biological women are biological women.
But where are you going with this? What are you trying to?
Well, there you have it. Dr. Hart says conservatism is couched in the language of academia, but it's merely just code for there are certain types of people I don't want to admit exist. I guess even philosophy professors have a propensity to straw man things they don't like or maybe don't even understand. So to take our tradition and reduce it down to disguised prejudice is very pseudo-intellectual by its own definition, is it not? Because by your own standard, Dr. Hart, you are displaying the pseudo-intellectualism by sounding like you aren't interested in any other truth other than the one that you are already interested in. Your argument assumes that when a so-called social conservative is making a critique of some social norm that may be deviating from some standard, that critique is not necessarily politically motivated. But given the fact that there are constant legal discussions about what we should be doing with gender, race, education, etc., for example, your assumption would be false. If, as Aristotle said, politics is just social arrangement, then there is political reason to question the direction society may be headed in. So you yourself have ignored the political dynamics at play when discussing social conservative positions, and thus have done the very thing you've accused the right of doing. You've decided that there are certain things that count and are legitimate, and others that don't. And you did not talk about those things that count and are legitimate. So why not actually engage in what conservatives actually believe, instead of misrepresenting our motives in the least charitable way? We do, for example, have a relationship with prejudice. In the Reflections of the Revolution in France, for instance, Burke actually used prejudice as a description of people filled with prepossession. In other words, it's the people with a deep-seated inherited respect for preference and tradition, institutions, and even the wisdom of our ancestors that in Burke's view can be called prejudice. And so it's not something to be ashamed of, but rather a natural and wise principle that safeguards society and its liberties by connecting the present with the past and providing some type of stability and continuity between the two. And Burke actually attributed the lack of prejudice to the destructive principles of the French Revolution. He lamented that the French chose to act as if they had everything to begin anew. And he also argued that they repudiated everything that belonged to those before them. So yeah, conservatives are prejudiced in a very specific sense, but so are those on the left. They're very prejudiced in a specific sense too. The left's emotional appeals, in fact, often mask ethnocentric prejudice. They often present themselves as beacons of equality, diversity, and inclusion. But beneath the surface of this presentation is a subjective value system that is itself prejudiced in favor of certain cultural norms. I mean, let's just use the patriarchy for an example, right? Well, there's a type of man that that is socially acceptable in this view, and there's a type of man that's not. So there's inclusion and exclusion, which is a type of ethnocentrism. You're including based on a certain type of identity or perspective or belief system, and you're excluding on the same grounds. And so, speaking of culture, Amanda Seales actually went on